I anticipated the beep a little bit there.
Yeah, that's fine. We're all good.
It's fine. I'll just seem slightly smarter because my punchlines will come in like a half second early.
This is Alice Caldwell Kelly's like one trick for podcasting success.
Yeah. I'm like min-maxing the podcast. You know.
Well. Hello, everybody. It's time for TF. It is the first episode we are recording of 2024.
Is it a free or a bonus episode? This one.
It is a free one.
It's the free one.
It's the free one, and because Alice is saying that, Milo is not here, and also Hussein is not here. That's right. It's just Riley and Alice.
Real skeleton crew hours.
Yes, that's right. And joining us is the man who has become our Middle East correspondent. It is Seamus Malekafzali. Seamus, how's it going?
It's good to be on Trashfuture for, I think, the 17th time in my entire life.
Just certainly make it feel that way, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, we, welcome you back as now, I think, a sort of Platinum Onyx Club member. You're entitled to 3 free well drinks in the lounge. And
pretty good.
Yeah, no, always a delight to have you on to talk about some of the problems.
Yes, as always, I think it's very good to be on a program that keeps updates for Neom when I have entirely checked that for my own sanity.
This is the thing, right? We just do this. We just find guests and we devise, like the guy from the Saw movies, the perfect sort of torture for them psychologically, and then we just lock them into that forever. Poor Nish Kumar is stuck with like us reading politicians' books, and then we've selected Neom for you.
No, the new name for the newest shape that they're building in Neom is buried behind my left eye. And the only way I'm going to know about it is if I stab my own eye and get it out.
I mean, when you think about it, MBS was doing Saw stuff to Jamal Khashoggi, so it fits, right?
Sure.
You have always valued innovation and disruption above your own family.
In many ways, reading your columns was like having all of your limbs bone sawed off.
Would you turn yourself into a line? I have the flu, so I'm delirious.
I'm right there with you. This is my first of 3 podcasts today. I look forward to my complete mental disintegration.
I think we've only picked 3 people that we routinely subject to the strangest stuff in the world. That's Nish, that's Seamus, and then Maddie for Eric Adams.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So look. Anyway,
sort of chosen victims. Yeah.
Why don't we? Because we're already talking about it. Let's start with some Neom stuff because
get the vegetables out of the way first.
Yeah, of course, the vegetables of Neom. Look, because you might be thinking, hey, you've been talking about Neom an awful lot recently, and
yes, because we're both subscribed to the YouTube channel for sort of masochistic work reasons, and so both of us get an alert on our phones whenever they release a new trailer, which they've been doing every few days now.
Yeah, and we would be saving this for later, except Seamus is on, so we got to do it. We have the and I don't know if you can believe this, but they have created another luxury lifestyle destination.
Oh, really? It's crazy.
You guys are fucking lying to me. Obsequious bullshit. But all right, fine, man. You can tell me about this. I'm not going to believe it, though.
Yeah. So I was really excited when they released their new plans for like Topian, which was how they're going to reinvent dinner for Neom.
It's called Topian?
Yeah, Topian, the food zone, the eating zone, the meal district.
Topian?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty boss. But then the problem is they went from that, which I was like, okay, great, you've got the zing and the energy of the line back. Okay, we got the cube, we have all this exciting stuff. We're no longer just making different shapes of hotel. We're back in business making cool things. But now they've come back out. They're like, hey, we've just released another luxury lifestyle community that's even more like a normal American gated community than anything else we've come out with so far.
I mean, this is sort of a grim development, right? Because the more like a subdivision it is, the more likely it is to actually get built.
Yeah.
And if Neom turns out to be a bunch of like places that could as well be in Scottsdale and like a meter of line at the center of it, that's just sort of the perfect ending.
You also have to remember that as of a couple months ago, Saudi Arabia has the World Cup. In 2034, they will host the World Cup, and they also are hosting the Asian Winter Games. So the line itself, obviously, that's never getting made in the full capacity that it was envisioned as. Neom, obviously, not the full capacity that it's envisioned as. But you can absolutely build hotels. You can absolutely build little gated communities, little resorts, buried up in these mountains. They know that. And if the more space you have to host people, the more tourists you can have in. I mean, this is what Qatar did in 2022. They literally built an entirely new city called Lusail. They built tons of hotels, and which also led, and they needed so much space that they were kicking out expats. Landlords were kicking out expats by raising their rent by thousands of dollars because they needed that much space. So no. This is something that they can build. This is something that they can build soon, and they know that there are enough rich people who will absolutely want to vacation in glorious northwestern Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from that, the rich people on the other end of this are like all of the architecture firms who are competing for Neom stuff, who haven't been able to get the like big ticket. Like, we're going to build you the line, we're going to build you the octagon, can now compete on, we're going to build you the best, weirdest subdivision in the world.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, Norlana, the newest one, is also weird and impossible.
It sounds like the name of a woman who has a column in Tatler. Okay.
I mean, I saw news of it, but I didn't see any other vague details other than that it was a bunch of hotels and it was a bunch of resorts. So what's impossible about it?
Okay, so the basic premise of it is this is from its like brief. Say the heart of the Norlana community. So it's a community of single family homes, even less ambitious than like the sort of giant hotel arcologies. Says the heart of the Norlana community will be a spectacular waterfront promenade and open spaces designed to foster human connection. That's the first sentence. Okay. Here's the second sentence. Super yachts can sail into the marina and people will be able to enjoy first-rate fine dining and shopping.
Okay, great. So it's like the Simpsons house times 500, but backing directly onto like the marina in Monte Carlo.
Correct, but The Simpsons, here's what makes it impossible, which is that The Simpsons house, imagine The Simpsons house, right?
Sure, yeah, rotating in my mind.
But cantilevered out over the water.
No, fuck off.
I don't... Oh, hold on, I'm looking up a photo of this as soon as I can.
Wait, so they're going to have like stilted houses, like in a mangrove swamp or something?
No, the idea is that all of the houses are supposed to look like they're part of the mountain.
Oh, okay. What fucking Bond villain shit.
Okay.
And then you like step off your super yacht directly into your mountain fortress.
Yes, more or less.
This looks like a pixelated Skyrim village. This looks so ugly.
We built Desert Morthor. There's like nothing to do. It's just like,
No, like there's a buildings that looks sort of, I mean, it doesn't look like a mountain, but you see these sort of tessellated buildings around here in Beirut a couple times, but it works because it's so like out of place with the rest of the city's architecture. It does not work when the entire thing looks like that. It just looks odd. But
just like plain backdrop.
Yeah.
It's basically a sentence of exclamation points. And it's let me tell you a little more about the amenities that are again designed to foster human connection. Number one amenity, equestrian and polo estate.
Ride your horse off the super yacht. Gotcha.
into the Simpsons house, which is cantilevered over the marina, next to 120 other Simpsons houses also cantilevered over the marina.
I just want to pause at this point to go back to all of the Neom marketing material, which they're really hyping up now. They're really pushing the what is Neom thing. They're doing promoted ads on Tumblr of all things, which is the funniest group of people you could get to move to Saudi Arabia.
Like what we're gonna get. Oh, they need furries. They say, we want the future of innovation at Neom. You will need furries.
That's true. But the thing is, right, if you go back to that level of abstraction and that level of hype, the stuff that they talk about, even still, is like, this is going to change our ways of living. This is going to be the blueprint for like the city of the 21st century. Everybody is going to act and think differently about their own cities because of what we're doing in the test bed here at Neom. And what the test bed turns out to be is like you jumping a horse off a super yacht into a pool.
That's good. Well, but again, this is every time I think about Neom,
it's
I'm always like,
joke I would make about if the Saudis tried to design a luxury suburb. Like,
that's because, right, that's why I think Neom is so interesting and why we keep coming back to it and talking about it. It's because, like so many things, it's interesting to see what the global, like the 0.00001% imagine is desirable living. Because it always ends up being different kinds of airport lounge, just multiplied by between 1,000 and 1 billion.
I get frustrated. I mean, this is a larger philosophical thing. But I get frustrated by how the super rich like no longer have a reputation for being sort of like I don't know, very concerned with the minutia of art and architecture and trying to see culture. It's they have less culture and less want to like live deliciously in the way that generations of old would like to. They have to like this is like I said that I literally just said this. This is obscenely ugly. I wish listeners at home like look this up on Google while you're listening to this. Why would you live there? Why would you want to? Yeah,
you can sort of think about AI in the same way that all these guys love both the kind of like insane rich people minimalism of like having an entirely like white empty house. And just handing off little design details or things like that to AI, so like nobody's involved in thinking about them, and it's just like thoughtlessly stealing somebody else. And perversely, right, I think the last rich guy to care about the fixtures and fittings and making them not beautiful, but like he thinks they're beautiful, may be Donald Trump, because I think he's insecure enough that like and vain enough that he's the only guy who's thinking, I want the like screen on the like private plane to like have a little Trump logo on it when it boots up, kind of thing. Or I want this escalator to be made of gold, right? It's tacky as fuck, but he's the only one thinking about these things.
He's between new money and old money, and he's kind of he's trapped in his own kind of Tartarus. No, I think that's a good point.
So the style that you're talking about is properly called eco-modernism. And anytime any rich weirdo plans an intentional community, they always go for eco-modernism. Like always. Prospera was eco-modernist. Everything in Neom is eco-modernist. Like all of the strange cities that we're talking about in Northern California, those like, well, actually that's an exception because that one is designed to be like a based epic walkable trad city. But anything that's like all the other ones are eco-modernist, which is this strange, empty hotel-like way of living. A few more things that the Norlana offers. It offers luxury boutiques and art galleries. It offers an 18-hole signature golf course in what is supposed to be the most sustainable community in all of history.
Okay, sure, but again, though, like that's nothing. Like. In some ways, this is a leveler in that, like, fucking dentists play golf. Like, there comes a certain threshold of wealth, right? At which point things like golf become accessible to you, where there is a decreasing difference between, like, owns 5 car dealerships and is Mohammed bin Salman. And that's insane.
Well, because I think that is Mohammed bin Salman, I guess, because he can't imagine anything other than just being a bigger version of the guy who owns 5 car dealerships. As he's just like, okay, well, I guess what I'll do is I'll own hundreds of 18-hole golf courses.
I also
One 18,000 hole golf course.
I also say two things. One is that saying things have an art gallery is not really like a bellwether of community and luxury, because anyone who has ever been to like a plethora of art galleries will know that most art galleries are incredibly tacky, and they feature a lot of pop art. Like in Venice, for example, I would walk by constant art galleries, quote unquote, which were just filled with like portraits of Mickey Mouse in like weird colors, or lots of portraits of the Joker. Lots of portraits of the Joker. Every city I go to, if you look in an art gallery, there is a portrait of the Joker somewhere. It's actually quite astounding. The Joaquin Phoenix
That's what
Joker.
this is going to be. Yeah, we're going to have a bunch of Joker pop art paintings facing out onto the super yachts.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I hate to say this because I feel like many at home will disagree with me. I wish that there were more projects with like weirder, more niche inspirations, like that Poundland. That's the name of the store, Poundbury. The thing that King Charles,
Prince Charles.
Doing.
Yeah.
Like that's it. It's made with a certain sort of like mood and time period in mind. It has a consistent architectural style. It's identifiable. It looks really uncomfortable to live in, but like at least there's a thought process behind there with an ideology that is not just like I love like as you said, Riley, like minimalism and going into airport lounges.
You're in a king's like nightmare of neoclassicism, but at the same time,
something.
Yeah, there's a vision. There is there is a vision as opposed to just kind of like nihilism and like architecture firm grifting.
Are we basically saying, say what you will about like base trad walkable Poundbury, at least it's an ethos?
Basically, yes.
Exactly.
I mean, like, if our sort of if the fight of the future is between eco-modernism, where everything looks like the house that Kanye West posts from, or like the theme parks in China that they made when money wasn't real, where they were just copying and pasting French chateaus in like suburb design. Give me the second one, I guess.
Yeah.
I hate both of them, but
I would absolutely live in Chinese Paris. Like, let's be real here. Let's not dance around.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I want to move now. We were going to talk about neom towards the end, but we did dessert first today.
Yeah.
Because we were already there.
And now I'm going to be thinking about Paris brackets Chinese for the rest of the episode. So thank you for that, Seamus.
It was my pleasure.
All right. So last time, Seamus, we had you on. It was just after October 7th, and we spoke about sort of what Israel had been doing in Gaza, and we talked about, I'd say I want to say chaos and short-sightedness, just on a strategic level, that would lead to a huge amount more suffering in the region, an expansion of the conflict, and let's say undeterrable maximalism on the part of the Israeli government that the U.S. was willing to, and the U.S. American allies were all but willing to encourage and tolerate rather than rein them in. And I would say that a lot of what we talked about is about to happen on that episode has happened. And now that the conflict is spilling over, or appears to be at risk of spilling over into neighboring countries, whether that is through activity in Yemen, through targeted assassinations in Lebanon, or in fact also just bombardment of towns in southern Lebanon by
attacks
Israel.
On US bases in Iraq. I mean, this is all stuff that's already happening.
And we're going to revisit this partly because we took a decision when that happened. It was like what we know about is like British mostly media and and the strange people that inhabit it, as well as people like Bill Ackman. And so we will talk mostly about the domestic ramifications of this for now, but we're going back to the actual region for a time.
Yeah,
so
once we have someone who knows what they're talking about, which we now thankfully do.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start by asking you this question, Seamus. On October 8th, Israel was waging one kind of war. Do you think they're waging a different kind of war now?
I think that's a very good question. I think so, in the sense that the different kind of war I think is far more dangerous to Israel's, I don't want to say survival as a nation, because that I think buys into the narrative that they're pushing on their own citizens, but I think it's survival in its current state, in the state that it has been commonly understood to exist in for the past 75 or so years. What they are risking right now by continuing to push and massacre into Gaza against right now an active International Court of Justice case against them for violating a genocide convention. They're pushing forward with that, calling the people who back the case Nazis in South Africa as in league with Hamas, pushing into Lebanon, into a war that I don't think Israeli generals actually want to. They of course would like to defeat Hezbollah, but I think they know that it's a bad move to make. But they feel like their hands are being forced by the 1,000 people who've been displaced. They feel that conflict is probably inevitable. They feel that they need to bring in the United States to fight their war in Yemen for them, to bring that war there. This is not a war that can be fought. This is a war that is being forced into a multi-front regional war that I am unsure Israeli society is prepared to deal with. Because what is the general propaganda strategy that Israel has deployed over the past 75 years? It's the idea that Israel is a Western nation, that it is, as Herzl envisioned, a bulwark against Arab barbarism. And it is a democratic nation that has a Western standard of living and is a professional fighting force. What we've seen so far is, I believe the numbers are 12,000 IDF soldiers are now disabled. Perhaps that number escalates to 20,000 when we talk about people with PTSD. The IDF military censor has attempted to cover up how many injuries there are. People coming out talking about how within 12 hours of them entering Gaza, their tanks were blown up and they were maimed. Their limbs had to be amputated. Then they have to go into the north and deal with a force that is far more better equipped and trained than Hamas with Hezbollah. The fact that they are going to have to deal with the knockdown effects of the Houthi blockade, Hezbollah in the north, Gaza in the south, and potentially whatever else that may come.
And the international ramifications of the ICJ stuff too.
Exactly. This is going to be the next couple of years, I think, are going to be extremely formative in the sense that the war that is being waged right now is going to create a society that is going to come to an extreme turning point. And I think it's going to become a nation that is more quote unquote liberal in the short term, in that I don't think Netanyahu is going to survive the next election. I don't think the current government is going to survive the next election. They absolutely hate it. But the environment that has been created against Palestinians, against Arabs, against Iran, I think it's going to create a chimera of war and want for destruction that is irreparable. And it's going to lead to something truly mortifying beyond, I think, what we can comprehend.
I've thought about this too, because as far as the sort of dynamic of the Israeli left versus the Israeli right, or Israeli liberals versus the Israeli right, where for a long time this settlement was, I think a lot about the Netanyahu campaign ad where, you know, the Israelis are like on the beach and he's like batting, you know, threats away and stuff. And it's like, this is the deal, right? Is we do the kind of like managed brutality, we do maintenance, we kind of like, we mow the lawn, and in return, you get to sort of like, you know, be on the beach. You get to work, you know, developing apps or something. And you have this kind of like nice, ostensibly progressive in some ways society, which is like untroubled by these things, right? And then that was just like instantly destroyed. And I don't know what's downstream of this other than like you replace Netanyahu with like some kind of more ostensibly liberal and serious and maybe less personally corrupt guy who is now in charge of a society.
Benny Gantz.
Yeah, exactly. Who is now in charge of a society which is like 100% committed to exterminate the brutes, you know?
Yeah. No, like There was a billboard that just appeared today, just to illustrate what's being discussed here, where it's saying that Netanyahu is good for the Arabs. The opposition here is not based on the fact that Netanyahu is waging a war of extermination. The opposition is that Netanyahu has endangered Israelis by taking his eyes off the ball in Gaza. It is always, the opposition is always in the direction of there needs to be more done against the Palestinians. It's never from the perspective that, almost never from the perspective that it should be that a different strategy of possibly reconciliation or more rights or negotiation should be pursued. I mean, the Israeli left, which Alice had to correct herself from saying, because
the Israeli left,
it's so marginal beyond, I think, what many people can comprehend, and even within that marginal left, the things that we would traditionally see as left wing in the context of like apartheid South Africa, for example. In apartheid, there were lots of Afrikaners who were not only working against apartheid, but they were literally with the African National Congress. People like Joe Slovo is a famous example of somebody who was technically a white settler in South Africa. He was from that sort of lineage. And he was a communist leader. He was a militant leader with the African National Congress, with the communists, and he fought apartheid that way. Then we contrast that with Israel here. And after 3 months of genocide, there's only been one person so far who has refused to come up to military service with the IDF. One person.
Yeah.
And even within that context, the statement that was put out by that refusenik put the equal blame on both Hamas and Israel for the war that is being waged. Like the Israeli left here is kind of it's a different ball game than previous conflicts. Yeah,
I do want to note one thing that struck me, which is sort of calling Netanyahu like effectively like an Arab lover, right? Is like reminded me of a bit from China Miéville's History of the Russian Revolution, where he talks about some graffiti that's like depose the Jew Kerensky, install Comrade Trotsky, which is funny because Kerensky isn't Jewish and Trotsky is. And it's just like, oh, okay, these things are now perfectly inverted, where it's like, you know what Netanyahu's problem is? He's too soft.
Or by being hard in the wrong way, he gave the Arabs what they wanted.
Exactly.
That's what I see as well.
Yeah.
You know, he was hard but not smart about being hard. So and this is also something that I've been thinking of, right? So we talk on the show a lot about political processes being only one way, right? That things can only ratchet up. We see that in the UK a lot, where like nothing can ever be refunded, but it can always be made more efficient, you know? And in the same way, right, we see and we talked about this on our sort of early October episode when we spoke to Seamus last, was the history of the Israeli government, especially in the last couple of decades, has been to constantly, especially since 2008, has been constantly to ratchet up tensions and to always escalate with both with neighbors, with Palestinians, because there really is no other logic remaining.
And with your allies too. I mean, this has been the thing with the US time and time again, is the US kind of like sets red lines. You go through the red lines. They set new red lines, and you kind of go through those until as long as it takes for them to like actually make any substantive threats. And now with Biden in the White House, a man who will say yes to everything, it's just kind of things are progressing to this point where you have Israeli officials talking seriously about this idea of a US-led multinational peacekeeping coalition in Gaza under IDF operational control, which is it's lunacy. It's pure lunacy.
No, I mean, for one thing, Alice, I think you need to stop with the fucking lies that you're spouting about Biden saying yes to everything. I think you should know that he had his officials say that there should not be a forceful displacement from Gaza.
Yeah, excuse me.
And I think that's
right.
as strong a disagreement as anyone has ever given in this entire war.
I've sort of like undersold his heroism on that one. You're right.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to put it out for the man. But and just as well with like the multitude of different plans that have been put forward by Israel for Gaza, none of which seem to be at all consistent with one another.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in awe, and I'm wondering, like, I feel like there has to be at some point something that would make the United States put its foot down, not out of, I guess, love for the Palestinians, because I don't think it exists, but like the idea that this is beyond optics even for us. And my belief about what that point would be keeps moving. And I don't know what it would be, because if the only thing they seem to be able to muster up is that they would like not there to be a giant city of refugees in the northern Sinai for all the Gazans to be, even though apparently there was a report of a U.S. aid official in November asking about the viability of it. So clearly they considered this at one point to try and temper things down. If that isn't like a point in which you would not even consider, then what would it be? I would like to know. I think that's something that an intrepid journalist should ask them directly, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to talk about other plans that they've had, Israeli officials have been reported to hold clandestine talks with Congo and Rwanda to accept sort of Gazans and this is Gila Gamliel, who said this at the Knesset. At the end of the war, the Hamas rule will collapse. There'll be no municipal authorities. The civilian population will be entirely dependent on humanitarian aid. There'll be no work, and 60% of Gaza's agricultural land will become security buffer zones. The Gaza problem is not just our problem. The world should support humanitarian emigration because it's the only solution I know.
I mean, and just to add on to that, Congo then denying that they were having talks. Then there were reports that Chad and then Rwanda were doing talks, and then Chad and Rwanda all denied it. Nobody wants to be associated with this, which makes me think that Egypt keeps ratcheting up as maybe the eventual choice, because maybe they'll just have them flood the border and they'll force it open. Because I don't think anybody else is going to take this deal.
Yeah, and I mean that's gonna like potentially collapse the Egyptian government as well. I mean the thing is insoluble as it is, because the only possible lasting solution, and it in some ways it's kind of already too late, is to cease the invasion and pull back out of Gaza and then negotiate. And that, you know, because that the Israelis have ruled that out, all we have left are either, you know, sort of dancing around the prospect of kill everyone and then just bulldoze it into the ocean, which I think is the way to interpret all of these like voluntary resettlement schemes, right? Is as sort of like more as ways of laundering that idea, right? Is to say, well, we've been through the Rolodex, right? We've tried all of these different countries. These are people who no one will take. Therefore, what choice did we have?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's either something that's intended to kind of like run cover for that, or it's just a way of running down the clock, of wasting time, of saying, well, we're thinking about what the plan is for the day after, when there is no plan, because there can be no plan, and the plan is just to continue killing.
Well, I say there is a plan. It's just the plan can never be acknowledged.
But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like, I don't know, right? I think like I sort of change by the day on whether I think that there is like an acknowledged plan anywhere within the Israeli government to like forcibly, permanently depopulate Gaza of Palestinians, or whether there is like it's in such chaos and incompetence that it's sort of like lurching towards that accidentally. And that's, I worry that that's the kind of question that like future historians are going to have to debate about. But like in terms of the material effect, it's exactly the same. And it's wild because a lot of genocides in history that I think it's uncommon amongst them that you can so directly and so obviously lay the blame at like one specific dude's like door, and Joe Biden here has like the single most responsibility for this happening.
The argument that I keep hearing a lot from liberals, even still, is that Trump would be far worse
Mm.
for the Palestinians. And yet I keep reading. I read an article like literally just today from the Huffington Post, and the line that a U.S. official who spoke anonymously to the HuffPost, the line that he used was, "The problem is no one can rein in Biden."
Yeah, it's like such an individual thing, and in some ways it kind of defies a material analysis or whatever, because it's just one guy who I don't know, read something that made him like this, or is just sort of like, maybe there's
remembering the 70s.
Remembering the 70s.
He's remembering what the times before were, because again, this is the same thing that governs the Israeli feeling of invincibility within its own country. If you grew up and you were an adult in the 70s, what was Israel to you? You grew up in a country that had beaten back so many different Arab nations, not once but twice. Your country not only occupied the West Bank and Gaza, but parts of Syria, which you would eventually annex. You had occupied the Sinai Peninsula. You were building settlements there. You were displacing Bedouins. Your entire life had been governed by this idea that you were the most powerful military in the region, if not on the continent. Your soldiers were feared and respected and seen as god kings. And this idea that you could do anything wrong is a fucking shock to your system and is incomprehensible. And Joe Biden, didn't grow up in Israel, is an Israeli, but when he talks about how if an Israel didn't exist, we would have to create one to pursue our own interests, and he says that blatantly, like he clearly buys into this myth himself. And when he talked and he believes Israeli intelligence completely about things like Al-Shifa and the beheaded babies and the rocket strike that hit Al-Ahli Arab Hospital, he has no inclination to entertain any other narrative. And this is the thing, like, okay, Trump obviously is a big fan of Israel, but in practice, I struggle to see what the difference would be, because if Israel is being held back by Biden, I don't understand what are the definable effects? Israel of Biden's pressure, quote unquote.
They don't even. This is the other thing. Is the flip side of that same coin is that he is providing all of this cover for them. He is doing all of this for them, and they can't stand him. They hate him for it because they the only people who believe that Biden is exercising effective control on Israel or on the IDF are Israelis.
No. I mean, American like Itamar Ben-Gvir. I follow him on Telegram, so I get alerts in my phone. Right. And I remember seeing one where he was like, America's our best friend, but we are not a star on the American flag. Like we're going to do what we need to do here. Like, yeah, God, the definable effects here that Israel is losing its mind over already, that it had to do, was that it stopped giving vague evacuation orders, and it made a grid of evacuation orders that it could define, which changed absolutely nothing. It just meant that there were specific numbers. And then they let in more humanitarian aid into Gaza, but still not nearly enough to prevent the worst famine that is ongoing in human history. And even then, the humanitarian aid trucks are not really there to feed people. They're doing the absolute bare minimum, because that was the quote-unquote agreement that Biden and the Israeli government came to about how they would keep supporting the war. It's still in furtherance of continuing to massacre people. It's not an honest attempt to come to an equilibrium of some kind or to offset effects. I'm frustrated. I'm continuous. I need to keep myself from getting frustrated because I did this on Chapo Trap and people said I sounded like Jordan Peterson.
No, it's fine. We don't care. So I mean, this is the thing, though, right? Is the thing that strikes me about Biden. The other thing is that this being a kind of weird individual sort of set of prejudices that he has means that he is so far outside the bounds of like the blob, right? Like, so you get this point where you have this kind of these rumblings of like, you know, CIA associated Congress people and like, you know, retired military and stuff having these kind of quite hesitant statements that's like, well, you know, are we sure this is sustainable? You have like, you know, allies like France and even to an extent in the UK being like, well, you know, we support Israel's right to do all of the horrible things, but like in a slightly more targeted way. And none of it gets through to him at all.
You also have people from the State Department like submitting letters of dissent. I'm reminded of the episode we did with Joseph about like the having to be involved in the administration of empire, but you are a good like Alger Hiss style liberal, and there's no McCarthy to come wash you out of the State Department.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely being perceived in the kind of like more lib and even just like more pragmatic bits of the US like government apparatus as like the democratic version of the Muslim ban, right? This is something that's so obviously like criminal and self-sabotaging and stupid. And you know, as with the Muslim ban, the effect of this kind of like internal dissent and internal protest is going to be next to nothing. So,
well, what I sort of wonder if it's going to happen is Biden out, Trump in, Chris Rufo appointed special investigator who then questions everybody in Congress if they're a closet anti-Semite.
Yeah, no,
God.
Not everybody in the State Department who signed these mealy-mouthed letters of protest and then continued doing their jobs anyway, right? That is sort of, if you like, overstatement for effect, but having sort of see these kinds of, you know, mass moral panics in service of an imperial goal, even if the imperial goal contravenes the sort of ostensible purpose of empire to increase the prestige, power, and security of the United States and its associated interests in the world. I mean, you could see that this is doing the complete opposite of that. We talked about like about these. We talk about pariah states like North Korea. Well, we're witnessing the creation of a pariah state right fucking now. But going back to the, you know, sort of as we say, the domestic sort of high political response, you know, this is self-defeating at every single level. I mean, it's
poorly managed empire, right? And
yes.
Which of course offends the people who want a well-managed empire.
Yes, precisely. And this, what I want to go back to is something I said earlier, which is the logic of only being able to escalate. That results in poorly managed empire. And that creates these kind of, I guess, internal fractiousness, and you know and so they are unable and unwilling to do anything about it.
It's also like you can kind of look at this as the culmination of a long series of failures in the management of empire, right? By American presidents, where sort of like both developments in Israel, developments in Gaza. And within the federal government, all kind of conspired to make it so that Israel had a far-right government whose like leash could no longer be pulled on meaningfully, right? And you know, was then supported by a presidential administration that didn't want to do it anyway. And this is going to sound like such an axe to grind, right? But this is true. I swear to God, this is true. A large part of this is directly the fault of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Oh
please,
my God.
Please speak on this.
Okay.
I will get too angry.
My God. The amount of when she went on, when she started talking again, God knows why, about Hamas, and she wrote this op-ed about why Hamas needs to be stopped, and she was talking about Palestinian, I think, like getting different types of loans. Women,
yeah. She worked with like women getting microloans, and it's like
microloans.
And,
like, what the fuck are you talking about? She was Secretary of State as a consolation prize after running one of the most racist. Loser. Yeah, after running one of the most
loser. One of the most racist presidential campaigns in history, losing anyway. And then was entrusted with like the job of managing American diplomatic and foreign policy, and her sort of party piece for doing that in relation to Palestine was, why don't we try and rig the elections in Gaza to force Hamas out and like maintain a sort of unitary power under the PA, which did not work and led to all of the PA's guys in Gaza being killed and Hamas taking power. It just like because she tried to overturn the election. I just like
no. Hillary Clinton. She is, I think, the most like malignant aspect of this lack of understanding of the Palestinian existence.
Yeah,
but it's the same bullshit that has permeated the whole view from the West, from Israel, about what the Palestinians are capable of and function as. Like, basic question, and you guys can say yes or no, depending on what you guys believe. Are the Palestinians human beings? Is this true?
Just take a second to think about this. Yes, of course. But like, I recognize
this is a philosophical thing. Are they human beings who have thoughts and they have feelings and they have the ability to form social groups? Like, let's be real here. This is true. This is a basic objective fact. So if I am to say to you that the Palestinians who have continuously resisted foreign oppression for 75 years without stop, when I present the idea to you that we need to overthrow their elected government and install a new one, and we're just going to hope that they're going to like not react, most, like, even if I love Fatah and I love President Mahmoud Abbas and I think Hamas is the worst thing since sliced bread, a normal person is going to tell you that sounds like a bad idea. That is going to create an infinite amount of problems, knockdown effects that we are not going to be prepared to deal with.
Fatah told them this.
Clinton burst through it again, and she doesn't, because she's incompetent and she doesn't know what she's fucking doing.
But this is the other thing. Like, Fatah told her this too. The Palestinian Authority told her this, and they didn't want to do it. Their intelligence services didn't want to do it because they knew it would get a bunch of their guys killed and hand Hamas like even more power in Gaza. And she sort of got them to do it anyway, which was the sort of predictable result.
Currently you see kind of reverberations of this stupidity right now, and at least one of the plans that Israel is putting forth, that the idea that the people, so Israel probably doesn't have the manpower and the mandate to annex Gaza, at least at this current juncture. So the plan that they're saying is that prominent families in Gaza, clans, tribes, whatever you want to call them, can do the governing for us and conduct civil matters. Even though this was not only a plan that was tried before in the 70s in the West Bank and it didn't work because they were seen as collaborators, and not only was this a plan that was put forth on a much larger scale in South Africa with the Bantustans, this was also the reason why Hamas was so popular in 2006 was not only because of opposition to Fatah and the elected government, but also because these prominent families had a lot of outsized power, and Hamas promised to rein them in. Like, what they keep doing these plans that they've already tried before and failed because they think that, this time, like, they'll get it. Like, what's the, I don't know. I don't wish that they were better, but like, I'm wondering why they aren't smarter about this.
Well, this is the thing. There is no smart plan left. Like, there is no smart plan that works, that doesn't cross some like red line of like, this is incompatible with the sort of like broader reason of like what Israel is, what the United States is, and what their policies are going to be. Right? For the same reason that the two-state solution is dead, right? Because there was no deal that Israel would have agreed to. In the same, by the same token, I mean, even the offers that they've made in the past, they wouldn't agree to now, even if there was anyone on the Palestinian side who would take them. But it's the same thing with Yemen, right? Where this was sort of like the Houthis attacking shipping in the Red Sea was eminently preventable. If this is like, to take the kind of like well-managed empire view for a second, and be like, this is something that should have been avoided, right? It was very easily avoided by the process of having any kind of overarching strategy, any kind of plan. And the Biden administration doesn't have one. It has a thing of like lurching from crisis to crisis, and this is the next crisis, right? And whatever solution arises to that is going to be something else that's insane and unsustainable, right? Because the sensible plan there, which is like to give the Houthis what they want, which is to exercise some meaningful control on Israel, is like unacceptable. So all we can do is this kind of like impossible shit of, oh, we're going to do, I guess, missile strikes on people who have been getting bombed by the Saudis for years at this point with the same weapons that we're going to attack them with, and that's going to do something, maybe.
We can only do what we've been doing, but bigger and more.
Yeah.
Essentially. And this is something I was thinking about as well when we were talking about, like, well, they want to just do the Bantustan plan again. That has been tried elsewhere and here and never works, because it's basically just a corruption lottery for like 22 families or whatever. Something we did in Pakistan that still has or something that was done in Pakistan that still has reverberations to this day, right? Which is that what's the Hillary Clinton style of view here is that you've identified the one institution that's causing all the problems. You change that institution, and then everyone's so distracted by their microloan business that the poison is removed.
It's
right?
interesting, by the way. We were talking about Trump earlier and how Trump wouldn't be any different, and as far as Republicans and Democrats go, in my reading on this, one thing I found is a kind of strange fact, which is that the sort of various Palestinian like PA delegations to the US of negotiators found that pretty much the only person who took them seriously was, of all people, Condoleezza Rice. So there's this weird space or there used to be anyway, in the Republican Party where it was possible to like think about these things, because the control of what Israel-Palestine policy was going to be on the Democratic Party was like, vice grip tight, whereas Republicans didn't give a shit, and so therefore, could be a bit more flexible in their own ways.
I disagree. I think Condoleezza Rice was a great friend of the Global South, and you saw this in the beautiful but star-crossed love of her and Muammar Gaddafi.
They were going to create a United States of Africa together. She would have been his queen, and she was crazier than him. And we're back to the Joker,
Lisa.
So just to finish off for the last maybe 10 minutes, I wanted to discuss how the sort of body politic of the US and UK were absorbing what's going on. Because, we've been speaking about Bill Ackman for years, but he's now become we've seen him become a sort of a right-wing minor celebrity.
Again, but a bit like Elon Musk, like one of these sort of high-value targets of radicalization. And this is like way downstream culturally of this,
And what has been interesting to me, at least looking out to the US, is that I see now happening, but centered in elite universities rather than in a political party, kind of what happened in 2018 over here. I'd say widespread acceptance that there is a kind of an actively anti-Semitic undercurrent that is somehow infiltrated some previously respectable pillar of society. In the UK, obviously, that was the Labour Party. And the US, that is now like
the woke universities,
the woke universities. And it's strange because both are about the sort of opinions, let's say opposition to what Israel's doing in Gaza. And yet, what's sort of strange is that the target of the universities, they're actually just, they're big hedge funds. They're not actually sort of doing anything sort of to try to meaningfully oppose what Israel is doing in Gaza. They're not actually particularly left-wing. They're just favorite targets of conservatives and obsessed over by liberals. Meanwhile, in the UK, the sort of moral panic tends to be more directed at street protests. But in both cases, it's being metabolized as this thing happening in the Middle East is being metabolized as there is a clear and present danger to the continuation of a safe society here in either the UK or the US. So what I was just going to ask, in fact, both of you is, how do you see these two tendencies as similar or different? Like, do you think I'm off base in seeing like my in comparing what's going on at universities in the U.S. now to what happened here in 2018 and 19.
I think the difference is that like where different kind of like different boots, different necks, right? In the UK, I think it's very much a hedge against any kind of like mass popular opinion or even like the concept of mass popular protest. Like we had a very large die-in on Westminster Bridge yesterday. And Keir Starmer's response to that, being asked about that, was, well, we've had MPs be assassinated before, which is nonsense. But it also reveals that like these are not people to him. Okay, they're not people in the same way that Palestinians aren't people to him, but they're not people, and the people are MPs staff.
How about this? They're not serious people.
Yeah, for sure. And as such, they shouldn't have any role in politics. And the concept of them having any role in politics, even like pretending to die outside the building, is threatening and is violent and is sort of like going to destabilize the serious politics being done by the serious politics doers. Contrast that with the US. I think what's happening in the US is an attempt to kind of like lock down present and future elite opinion, right? Is to say that like, you cannot express any hesitation about Israel's genocide and remain president of Harvard because we're going to find some kind of like academic jaywalking plagiarism bullshit. And you can't like do this and remain a student at Harvard or wherever because we're going to have the truck that doxes you. And therefore we're going to do our level best to like keep you out of the elite. I don't know that that really reflects anything about like the different power structures in those societies, other than that in Britain it's more familiar to try and like just kind of crack down on protest more generally.
So the reason I draw the comparison is because I see them both as kind of sea change moments where this particular idea becomes totally embedded and inescapable.
The similarity, I see a lot of similarities, but they're both in that they're both distractions from the actual thing that they're trying to attack, right? I mean, obviously the discussion is focused around Israel and the fact that disagreeing with Israel, criticizing Israel is itself anti-Semitism. But with Corbyn, it was about the idea that he was a socialist and that he was offering a real ideological shift change, and therefore him being a Jew hater overwhelmed all of that. But here, I mean, it's about Israel, but when these anti-Semitism discussions come up, they feel exceptionally disconnected from that in of itself. It becomes a more vague sort of accusation. And what's happening in Gaza is de-emphasized in favor of the concerns about a kind of general, quote unquote, campus safety, whatever that means. And it's the same thing with the safety within the Labour Party and the actual safety concerns that they express. If I can be frank, do not strike me as terribly concerning. It's more just about having to witness other people have different opinions than you in public.
Yeah, for sure.
Meanwhile, what is happening in Gaza? The entire educational system has been militarily destroyed. IDF soldiers brag about the fact that they just blew everything up, and they kill professors and university presidents and students. There's no... I understand the ramifications of these kinds of discussions and how bad they are, and that they should be cared about. But I'm angry that, like you said, Alice, like a jaywalking violation, essentially, and yet we have to have these stories come back up about Claudine Gay that I keep having to see, and then I go into the comments on Reddit on these posts, and there are people with thousands of posts talking about like, well, there should not be someone who is plagiarizing, who is leading one of our nation's leading institutions. Yeah. Like what? These are conversations. They extract them from the primary causes, which are major, and then they make them into just navel gazing nonsense. It happens over and over.
Because you're only able to navel gaze when you are in the throes of, I think, an imperial catastrophe. Not just a catastrophe for the empire, though it is, but a catastrophe that the empire is visiting on others. You have to start thinking about plagiarism. Otherwise, you will have to think about what's actually happening. Because the New York Times will have to, it loves talking about the plagiarism thing because that is a drama. It's a drama it can understand. It's a drama that it can debate without crossing red lines about its own sort of editorial support for American empire. It's the same thing in the UK. We can endlessly talk about whether or not street protesters are chanting slogans that are exactly in line with what is acceptable, right? Because that's how we're metabolizing it, right? We're metabolizing it as basically, are street protesters sufficiently polite and deferential? You know, the US is metabolizing it even more ridiculously and abstractly in some kind of a homework debate, right? There is nothing more, I think, that they can look at, because to look beyond these questions of basically appropriateness will be to look into the real world, which they will never do.
Yeah, these discussions about like protest tactics in particular. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but whenever somebody brings up the fact that blocking roads distracts people from their cause, makes people not support them, bothering people, I guess, with chanting on the subway, makes people not support them. I have literally never heard of a case in which someone who otherwise would have supported Palestine was distracted away from that cause because someone made him late for work.
Yeah.
Or bothered him on the subway by being too loud. Like, that is not somebody who otherwise would have entertained your position. That is someone who already disagreed with you.
Anyway, I think that's all we have time for today. But Seamus, once again, I want to thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this topic, and also neom, which feels like a long time ago.
Oh, it was an honor.
And of course, if people want to hear more Seamus, or read more Seamus in this case, where can they go?
They can go to Seamus-Malekafzali.com. And if they want to see how to spell that, they can, I guess, copy and paste it from this episode.
That's right. I also want to thank you out there for listening to the first free episode of 2024, recorded in 2024. And that we will see you on the bonus in a few short days, where we will be talking about the strange death of the Hyperloop with, well, there's your problem's very own Justin Rosniak.
It's a good podcast.
Love Roz.
Yeah.
We actually have two hosts of Well, There's Your Problem guesting.
Wow, you got Liam?
Alice unfortunately won't be able to join us because she's busy guesting on a podcast. I don't know which one.
Yeah, so some Brit thing. It's not important.
Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you again, Seamus, for coming on. And we'll see you in a few days. Bye all.
Bye.